Welcome to Flash Fiction from Giant's Reach by Steve Cook. This bit of flash fiction is part of my attempts to bring the world of Giant's Reach through a sort of industrial revolution. This is something that I think has been holding things back for a while. I hope you enjoy it. It is Christmas next week, and I'd like to take a moment to wish everyone listening a very happy Christmas and a very safe and peaceful New Year. Freedom of speech. Ilona stepped back from the workbench and considered her work. It gave off a mild radiance, the golden yellow of reflected sunlight. "Is it stable this time?" She nodded, not even looking at her assistant. "I think so, Oliver. No cracks yet, no release of energies. Crystallization has been faultless." On the table, about the size of her hand, sat a jewel of yellowdust. The glow seemed to emanate from somewhere at its centre, little motes of light that drifted around, like dust caught in sunlight. "I hope it is," Oliver murmured. "We don't have enough dust for another go." "I'm tentatively hopeful." Ilona took up a pair of calipers, measuring both length and width. She sucked at her teeth. "Less than a fraction of an inch, but it is slightly too small. It'll do, though, within tolerances." Oliver watched for a moment more, then picked up a cauldron from the workbench. Inside, the remains of the supersaturated solution of yellow dust and water had become a sort of crystalline gunk that thinly coated the sides. "I'm going to see what I can get back from this. Call me when it's time to test it." Ilona nodded absently, already drawing her notebook towards her. She dipped a quill in ink, tapped the excess off the nib, and began to write. "The ancient texts," she wrote, "are frustratingly opaque about this. Like an instruction manual with the front page missing, hopefully future experimentation will be able to determine how this device does what it is designed to do. For now, I am content with having created a copy, however imperfect it ends up being." She didn't look up until Oliver set the now clean cauldron back on the bench with a dull clank. Her page was filled with observations and illustrations, each one picked out in her spidery hand, all seeming to dance slightly in the ever-shifting yellow light. "I think we're there," she said. "By now even our best efforts had fractured, but the ratios are correct. The amount of dust needed is incredible. Only the richest will be able to afford one, at least for now, but it's time. Fetch Francis. Meet me outside." Oliver scurried off. Ilona loosened the clamps that held the yellow dust jewel in place, gently lifting it. It was heavy, surface smoothly domed, its base flat. She cradled it to herself, and was surprised to find that it quickly warmed under her touch. As soon as she pushed the door open, the biting wind struck at her. The courtyard outside was drifted with snow, white highlights on a bleak picture. The two wings of the workshop enclosed the courtyard, the gatehouse ahead forming the fourth side, but still Ilona shivered. She wrapped her stained robe tighter around herself and crossed to where Oliver was standing next to an uplifted rabbit. The boy wasn't faring much better. His thin ankles were visible between the hem of his trousers and his shoes, and he had tucked his hands under his armpits to protect them. "He says he's ready," the boy said, nodding to the rabbit. Ilona drew herself up and looked into the rabbit's golden eyes, the same shade as the jewel in her hand. "Francis, are you sure?" The rabbit nodded. He had one ear longer than the other, and the snow had started to gather amidst his fur. He lifted his chin slightly, exposing his throat. "Thank you," Ilona murmured, knowing he would hear her. She gently brought the stone up in her hand to his throat, turning it this way and that to centre it. When she was satisfied with its orientation, she pressed it into the dull brown fur. There was a flash of yellow light as it made contact with skin, And Francis jerked back, inhaling sharply. The yellow jewel stayed nestled above his breast, embedded in his fur and fused to his skin. Ilona scuttled back as the rabbit's paws stamped at the flagstones, his eyes rolling. "Francis! Francis, can you hear me?" I'm okay, a male voice said. At the rabbit's throat, the jewel pulsed with every word. Francis froze, eyes widening, and clapped a paw over the jewel. The voice came again, seeming to emanate from the empty air. "Did I say that?" Ilona felt relief flood through her as she exhaled a white cloud into the air. "Yes, Francis, you did." "How unusual," the rabbit said. He bared his teeth in the facsimile of a human grin. "I can talk." Ilona looked at Oliver, her own broad smile mirrored in his face. In the darkness of the wintry evening, the warm glow of the yellowdust jewel lit all three of them like a tiny fire. "At last," she whispered, "humans and uplifts have the freedom of speech." You've been listening to flash fiction written for my Patreon, Giant's Reach. If you'd like to become a supporter, go to patreon.com/Giant's Reach, where you can find more fiction just like this,